Hi, this is Roger in Finland, and today we're comparing the DJI Osmo Action and the Sony ZV-1 as vlogging cameras. I'm well aware that only one of the two is marketed as a vlogger's camera, and that's the Sony ZV-1, but I think that in general, action cameras are underrated and excellent options for vlogging purposes. They tend to have wide lenses, they tend to have excellent image stabilization, they are super portable, and nowadays you can even find decent audio solutions. I'm not sure how decent the audio is today because it's winding really much, but we're vlogging with the DJI Osmo Action right now, and I have the Rode Wireless Go with a fluffy thing here in my chest. So you tell me how it sounds. Things that I like about the DJI Osmo Action is that it's tiny, it's small, even though when you rig it up, rig it is maybe a big word for this, but when you put a cage, so it's mounted on top of something. I have it now on top of a Joby Gorilla Pod. The tiny one is the first thing that I found at home. And then now I have the receiver of the Wireless Go. It's not so tiny, but this still fits in a jacket pocket of any normal jacket, really. Another cool thing of this camera is that it's actually waterproof. Not that I would recommend vlogging underwater, but in some weather conditions, it might be the only option. And forgive the lack of B-roll today, but I think that it's important in this video that we're talking about which of these two cameras will be better for you in vlogging context. I think it's best that you see the footage that comes out of it in the specific use case of vlogging than me showing some B-roll of how do I pull the little hatch showing where the SD card is, or what kind of tripod do I have mounted under the Sony. So hopefully the footage is useful because I'm showing the use case. Oh, there you go. We have another scenario where vlogging with the Osmo Action is much better than with the Sony ZV-1. I have a video on vlogging with the Osmo Action in the harsh Finnish winter, but I think that in the harsh Finnish summer, the Osmo Action is also a better choice. Basically, if you want to be vlogging in the rain, like it is right now, you need a waterproof camera that has decent enough audio. And the Sony ZV-1 will not cut it because it's not waterproof. So, there you go. The Sony ZV-1, on the other hand, is going to give us much better image quality. We have a much bigger sensor. We can get some blurriness in the background. It has integrated ND filters. It has much more flexible codecs, powerful picture profiles. If we're sticking only to image quality, it is a better camera. But of course, it always depends on the need. And now that we're talking about this vlogging business, which the definition nowadays would be I'm walking around while talking into the camera. In my case, in the middle of the forest, because I don't feel too comfortable doing this next to other people. But anyway, how is this performing? The issue is that now, in order for me to use a somewhat decent microphone, I need to take out the little hatch that covers the USB-C port and the micro SD card, so I can plug the CY Nova adapter, that then it has a 3.5mm jack to plug microphones in, and then that makes it non-waterproof anymore. So it's a little bit balancing. Still, the microphones of the DJI Osmo Action in their own sound pretty decent, given that you don't cover them when you're holding them with your hand. So that's something that you need to be a little bit careful. We have the same audio setup than before, so I have the Wireless Go with the fluffy thing here in my chest. It's again, or still, very, very windy, and I'm curious as well to see and to hear what's the difference between the ZV-1 and the DJI Osmo Action using the same microphone, which is a very, very practical setup for vlogging. The stabilization is much better in the DJI Osmo Action than the Sony ZV-1 in any of its modes. The lens is much wider, which is probably nice for vlogging. Not necessarily because you need to see the scenery, which today is beautiful, but it's so that you don't need to hold the camera so far from yourself. Now I'm holding it at what? Half a meter from my head, maybe still a little bit too close. But I think that the field of view is what I would want, or what I do want, for a vlogging type of situation. And here the screen is much better, and I can see how I'm way too big in the frame, to be honest. So now I'm in hands. I'm holding this a little bit farther away from me, and I do have long arms, but now we have the 24mm equivalent cropped in because of the active stabilization, and this is pretty tight for a vlogging purpose. Now, if you like this field of view, this framing, the bigger head instead of the wider frame and seeing more what's on the background, then that's better for you than the DJI Osmo Action was, but that's a consideration. You need to do B-roll and these kind of things, which today I'm not going to show, but this camera is capable of 4K 60p, Full HD, up to a lot. I'm going to have to put a caption for that. That's kind of cool, but of course, it's a fixed focal length. So you can modify a couple of parameters. You can set it to normal, to wide, and then do the de-warping so that things don't look fish eye-like or not so much. But still is a fixed focal length compared to the zoom that we do have in the ZV-1. When it comes to B-roll and what else could you do, the Osmo Action, as we saw, or we talked about, does have 4K 60. This doesn't, so it would go up to 4K 30 if I would have to change it to NTSC, which I don't. So for me, this is a 4K 25p camera, always and only, and I can go to Full HD to 100 frames per second. But yeah, we have a zoom. With the zoom lens, we have a lot more flexibility when it comes to possible B-roll or shooting other things than just the same wide frame. Of course, the Osmo Action is much wider, and in here I can imagine already a few people suggesting that I should get the wide lens adapter. I think Ulanzi makes one of them, but I'm not a fan of sticking something in front of this lens. Some of them are reported to be quite heavy, and in general, to me, the point of this camera is the compactness of it. If Sony makes the ZV2, I may make a wish list also. So let's wish for a wider lens. Other than that, I'm really happy with this camera. And for vlogging purposes, this is still pretty good and pretty decent. It's a bit heavier than the DJI Osmo, but it's not heavy. Then of course we have the much bigger and flip-up screen. The DJI Osmo Action does have a tiny screen. The DJI Osmo Action does have a tiny screen that you can use for framing, but I wouldn't trust it much. Also, this being an action cam, and now especially that I'm walking here in the forest and I might trip and fall over, if the camera falls on the ground, we'll be fine. I would be a bit worried about the wireless Go receiver. Okay, now that I'm talking about the wireless Go, if this sounds okay with this much of wind, I'll be very impressed. So reasons to choose the Osmo Action instead of the Sony ZV-1 as a vlogger's camera: portability, pocketability, stabilization, and wider angle lens. And those two might be anyway the two most important parameters when choosing a vlogging camera. So which one would you choose? If the wider field of view and the potential waterproofing of the Osmo Action is what you want, then you know what to buy. If you want the better image quality, the more fully featured camera for both video and photography, then the ZV-1 is an excellent option, because this is a good camera in general. Now we're talking specifically about the use case of vlogging. And if I would have to tell you which of the two to choose, I'm not sure really. It really depends on what you put more emphasis on. The wide field of view, Osmo Action. More features of the video camera, the ZV-1. Smaller and lighter, the Osmo Action. Good camera for taking pictures as well, the ZV-1. Do you want to have more flexibility in color grading? You get S-Log2, S-Log3, HLG profiles in the ZV-1, even if they are 8-bit. I've talked about it quite a lot. In the Osmo Action, you do get some sort of flatter profile. It's not the same, it's not as flexible as the S-Log profile from here. So that would mean that the ZV-1 is a better camera for you if that's where you put the emphasis on. When it comes to connectivity, well, you need the special adapter from CY Nova to get proper audio. And the ZV-1 itself, the microphones are decent, and it has the jack input to connect things like this wireless Go, like we have right now. So I still think that the edge goes to the ZV-1 for connectivity, specifically for audio. And then, of course, you do have an HDMI out in case you want to do more serious things like record this into an Atomos Ninja 5 or use a monitor, which of course I wouldn't do for vlogging in a million years. But anyway, the things that you can do once you're done vlogging, what else do you do with this camera? Myself, I got the DJI Osmo Action a few years ago. I've been using it quite a lot. It's an excellent holidays camera to take into the swimming pool with the kids. Then the ZV-1, I got a good deal secondhand, and I've been using it and enjoying it way more than I thought I would. It's again an excellent holidays camera, not to go into the swimming pool, but otherwise, and definitely a very useful, very flexible tool. And for me, that I've been used to use Sony and Sony menus for quite a few years, I don't even complain about them anymore because I know how to use them. So once I got the ZV-1, of course, I spent my couple of hours setting all my custom buttons and quick menu, and I'm good to go. The one thing that I'm noticing right now is that even if this is a very, very light camera compared to the really strong people that vlog with A7 S3s and Canon R whatevers and those big lenses, I admire them, I admire their strength. I'm a big dude, and I'm getting tired of holding the ZV-1 half a meter from me. Call me weak if you want, and send me to the gym. I might try to do that, but something to consider when thinking about vlogging, which is walking around, holding the camera, and talking to it. So to close this up, maybe a couple of questions for you guys. For those of you who are vloggers using the Sony ZV-1, would you consider the DJI Osmo Action as an alternative, and why? And the opposite as well. For those of you that are vlogging mostly with action cameras, be the DJI Osmo Action or some of the GoPro incarnations, are you considering maybe the ZV-1, and why? And for the rest of you that have been considering both, hopefully we did shed some light in some of the differences that might sway you in one direction or the other. As always, there's never a good answer to these questions because it depends on you, on your needs, your preferences, and in what characteristics and features do you put more emphasis on. But I hope you liked this video. I hope it sounded okay. And we're gonna see you soon for some more content.